I was halfway through a late Friday coffee when Marcus Trent's voice cut across the war room like a whip. "If I see one more error on this dashboard, someone's getting fired." He didn't say it to me, not directly, but his eyes landed where I was sitting at the console, only I truly understood. "My name's Colin Hale. I'm 41 Principal Solutions Architect at HelioSync Solutions. The guy who built the nervous system our entire logistics platform runs on. 14 years of patches, safeguards, and midnight fixes buried under dashboards that execs like Marcus thought were magic buttons. My world was code contracts and compliance traps designed to keep the system upright, no matter who was steering. Marcus wasn't looking for solutions. He was looking for someone to bleed. He'd been COO for 3 weeks and already fired 2 department leads, outsourced IT ticketing to a chatbot that once confused a server outage with a personal crisis, and merged teams without even telling HR. He had a slick haircut, 0 keyboard calluses, and the confidence of a man who thought risk management was something you could bluff. That night, the system hiccuped, 12 minutes logged, fixed annotated. But Marcus didn't want the explanation. He wanted a target, and in that moment, I realized the target was me. Here's the thing about people like Marcus: they confuse silence with weakness. I wasn't loud in meetings, I didn't posture or chase credit. I just made sure the gears turned and the auditors slept at night. But my quiet work also meant no one upstairs really understood what they were standing on. They thought stability was automatic, not earned. I typed my last line of code, saved the report, and leaned back. My monitor showed a perfect 3% CPU usage, clean, stable, safe. Behind it, hidden under 3 layers of permissions, blinked a little heartbeat I'd built years ago. A safeguard for the safeguard. A dead man's switch. Not sabotage, not destruction, just contingency. That was my insurance against exactly this kind of arrogance. And when Marcus finally slammed error logs on my desk, barking like a man who mistook volume for competence, I didn't argue. I just said, "Okay," calm even. Then I closed out the client dashboard, slid my notebooks into my bag, and double-clicked the teal icon I hadn't touched in a decade. 1 line blinked across the screen: "Run final cleanup script." I hit enter. No alarms, no fireworks, just silence like a tomb being sealed. Before I go further, let me know where you're listening from, and hit like if you've ever worked with a boss who thought shouting louder was the same thing as fixing problems. As I handed HR my badge and walked out past Marcus, I knew something he didn't. The system would keep running for now, but without me, without the key, it would stop listening. They hadn't just fired an employee. They'd fired the architect. And by Monday morning, the cracks would already be showing. When security walked me to HR, I didn't argue. My badge gave one last hollow beep at the glass door, and that was it. 14 years reduced to a sound smaller than a microwave finishing lunch. Karen Holt was waiting with a clipboard already filled out. She didn't look me in the eye when she told me to sign. I held the pen steady. "Issue resolved," I muttered out of habit, the same phrase I typed into 1,000 log tickets. For her, this was paperwork, not the end of a career. The office behind me buzzed like nothing had happened. Keys clicked, Slack pings chirped, and Marcus's voice still carried from the war room. It was like watching a building keep running after the architect quietly walks out the back door. As I signed, I thought about the spiral notebook in my bag. Years of dependency maps, logic trees, little annotations no one else would ever read. Some were scribbled on nights when my kid was asleep upstairs and I was patching code on a VPN at 2 a.m. That notebook wasn't just notes, it was my insurance policy. Karen pushed the clipboard toward me. "We'll follow up next week, Colin." "Don't bother," I said. Calm, not rude, just final. Because what Karen didn't know and Marcus didn't understand was that the teal cleanup script wasn't destructive. It wasn't some Hollywood self-destruct button. It was a gate. The system would keep humming for a while, enough to give them false confidence. But soon every process would start asking for something they didn't have. The handshake protocol. 4 lines of code I wrote years ago. 4 lines only I knew. I walked past coworkers on my way out. Julia Ramos glanced up from her desk, her eyes darting between me and the HR rep trailing behind me. She opened her mouth like she might say something, but stopped. People looked, but no one spoke. You're invisible until the silence is unbearable. The elevator dinged. I stepped in, badge useless now. As the doors closed, I pictured Marcus strutting into Monday morning meetings, convinced he'd cleaned house. I pictured the dashboard still green, still calm, right up until the moment they asked for the key. That's the arrogance tax. Companies think systems are self-running, that people like me are interchangeable. But stability doesn't live in dashboards. It lives in the hands that built them. Outside, the air was cool and damp, like the storm had passed early. I slid into my car, placed the notebook on the passenger seat, and sat there a moment longer than I needed to. Have you ever walked out of a building you kept alive, wondering if anyone inside even realized what they had lost? No rage, no panic, just a strange kind of relief. Because if they were foolish enough to fire their architect, they deserved to see what silence really costs. And silence was already on its way. By the weekend, their dashboards would still be glowing green right up until the numbers stopped making sense. I always thought betrayal would feel like a knife, sharp, obvious. Instead, it sounded like shoes squeaking on polished tile while everyone pretended not to notice. Walking out of Heliosync that Friday night, escorted like I'd pocketed a stapler, I realized how many people I had saved in silence. Tickets I'd answered at midnight, data disasters I'd patched before a single executive ever knew. And in that moment, not one person spoke. Julia Ramos stood halfway out of her cube when I passed her mouth opening like she wanted to protest. Then she caught Marcus Trent's reflection in the glass and sat back down, typing something meaningless just to look busy. That's what corporate fear does. It turns friends into spectators. How many times had I kept her work from falling apart, only for fear to erase that memory in a second? The notebook on my passenger seat felt heavier on the drive home. 14 years of sketches and dependencies scribbles from nights when the supply chain balanced on a patch I wrote at 3 a.m. To Marcus, that was clutter. To me, it was proof no system runs on magic. I killed the engine, and pulled the notebook into my lap. Near the back, a hand-drawn map of the fail-safe cluster, 3 redundant nodes stitched together by the handshake protocol. I traced the lines with a fingertip, the way you trace a scar. I built that protocol for continuity, not revenge. For the day someone tripped over a cable in Omaha, or rebooted the wrong box in Phoenix. The irony wasn't lost on me. Marcus thought he'd cleaned house. What he really did was lock himself out of the only key that mattered. Inside, I tossed my badge onto the counter. It landed face up, my ID smile staring back like an old joke. I left it there. No reason to keep a reminder of how cheaply loyalty is traded. I opened my laptop, not Slack, not email. Those were gone. Through a side tunnel I still controlled, I checked the system heartbeat. CPU held steady at 3%. Packets flowing, dashboards green. It looked perfect. But that green wasn't health, it was denial. The handshake protocol had already taken over. The system would keep humming just enough to look normal. Then the first cracks, a 6-hour lag, here a duplicate shipment there, dashboards turning into watercolor instead of instruments. In the logs, one line kept surfacing in plain English, the way I wrote it years ago. So even a panicked director would understand handshake required status waiting. Marcus would call it sabotage. It wasn't. It was design, my design, a firewall against stupidity. And they had just fired the only person who could disarm it. By Saturday afternoon, a junior will file a weird lag ticket and try a reboot. It'll do nothing. By Sunday night, their biggest client will notice the numbers don't add up. I won't be there to explain why. That night, I poured a drink and sat on the back porch. No pings, no midnight quick questions. Just quiet, the kind that feels wrong until your body remembers what rest is. The system didn't sleep. It was already waiting. By Sunday night, their biggest client would notice the numbers didn't add up, and I wouldn't be there to explain why. Saturday morning, I brewed coffee and opened the blinds. No Slack pings, no blinking phone. For the first time in years, the silence didn't mean something was broken. It meant it wasn't my problem anymore. At Heliosync, the cracks had already started. Systems like ours don't fail loudly, they decay. First it's small. A lag you can excuse a misfiled transaction, you can blame on a sleepy warehouse clerk. To executives, it looks like weather. To me, it's arithmetic. By midday, the Cincinnati warehouse flagged a delay. Inventory updates weren't hitting the master log. First assumption, VPN glitch. Always the VPN. A junior tech rebooted the sync service twice and wrote up a ticket like a bandage ENC 41277 intermittent cache delay. Nothing changed. By evening, Dallas filed the same complaint. Then Phoenix, a pattern pretending to be coincidence. Marcus kept telling anyone who'd listen that the house was in order. He likes that phrase like stability can be willed into existence on a status call. I sat on the porch with my spiral notebook open across my knees, flipping pages like photo albums. The fail-safe sketch stared back at me, redundant loops tied to the handshake I wrote years ago. Under it, in thick ink that bled through the page, I'd scrawled, "Don't patch arrogance." I must have written that after an all-hands where Marcus waved off my talk about dependency drift. Funny how notes written in frustration turn into policy. Have you ever watched someone march into a hole you marked in bright paint, then blame the paint for being too loud? By Sunday morning, the dashboard lag was 6 hours. Orders showed as shipped before they left the building. Customer service quietly doubled their canned responses. And still, the graphs glowed green. That's the danger of dashboards, they can comfort the ignorant. I poured another cup and thought about how many times I had erased evidence of fragility. Every midnight patch, every surgical rollback turned chaos into a clean morning. Executives believed in automation. What they never saw was the human scaffolding underneath. Now that scaffolding was gone. Around noon, my phone buzzed. "Julia Ramos' numbers don't add up. Please tell me you didn't do this." I stared at it for a moment, then set the phone down. She deserved an answer, but not yet. The point wasn't to gloat. It was to let reality speak in a language even Marcus couldn't shout over. By late afternoon, someone tried the oldest trick in the book, a forced restart on the main sync process. It made the queue hiccup. Labels reprinted, a handful of confirmations duplicated. Nothing catastrophic, just enough to make a confident person doubt the mirror. That's all the handshake ever needed to do. Ask for the key in a voice only I would recognize. On paper, HelioSync still looked compliant. SLAs hadn't been breached yet, but the slope was greased. The wrong Monday question, the wrong executive impulse, and the numbers would slide faster than they could be explained. As the sun dropped, I closed the notebook and listened to the quiet. No quick favor pings. No calendar placeholders creeping into my evening. Just the kind of silence you only hear when people finally feel the weight of their own decisions. By 7:30 a.m., Monday 1 calendar title would do what a dozen warnings never did. Board review ops continuity. And Marcus would run out of excuses. By Monday morning, the board would be demanding answers, and Marcus Trent would run out of excuses. Monday at 7:30 a.m., the calendar invite hit, board review ops continuity. In our world, that's the fire alarm you hear through walls. By then, decay wasn't deniable. Fulfillment queues froze mid-process. Labels printed with placeholders where client names should be. Cincinnati swore pallets left the dock that never cleared the dashboard. Dallas flagged an $800,000 reconciliation gap. The system was up. It just wasn't listening. Marcus Trent charged into the war room with Connor Price a half step behind, eyes scanning screens like one of them might decide to fix itself. "Reboot the cluster again," Marcus said. "We already did." Twice Connor answered. "Then do it again." At 8:05, Philip Crane joined by video board. Liaison crisp tie, zero tolerance. "The board needs a clear assessment," he said. "Not excuses. What's the impact?" "It's minor latency. Our teams are on it," Marcus replied. Crane didn't blink. "Then why is Stephen Adler at North Shore Logistics telling me his orders haven't moved in 12 hours? That name sucked air out of the room. Adler was the kind you don't lose and keep your job. "We're escalating resources," Marcus tried. "You fired your resources," Crane said. "I wasn't there, but I know that silence. It burns." At my kitchen table, my badge still lay on the counter where I dropped it, Friday. My spiral notebook was open to the page that reads, "Don't patch arrogance." I remembered the day Marcus waved off my dependency audit as overkill. Nobody cares about invisible plumbing, Colin. Now the pipes were bursting. By 9, the call became cross-examination. Legal asked about breach clauses, sales asked for talking points, finance wanted timing on the reconciliation hole. Crane asked for facts, not adjectives. Marcus blamed the VPN, then legacy code, then vendors, everything but gravity. Connor finally cracked. "It's not the VPN," he said quietly. "It's the architecture." Crane nodded once, then find the architect. That line echoes down hallways. It also rearranges careers. From my side, I sipped coffee and listened to rain on the window. For once, it wasn't me in the hot seat. It was them, and the system had already said everything I needed to say. Compliance would call this service degradation. In plain English, our SLA credits start at 12 hours of missed targets and compound daily. After 72, certain clients can claim breach and walk. You don't talk your way out of that. You fix it, or you call the person who can. Have you ever watched someone ignore every warning, dismiss every red flag, and then finally beg for help after the damage is done. If you've been there, tap like and subscribe. It tells me these stories matter and that you've been in the trenches too. By late morning, even Marcus knew the system wasn't coming back without me. Pride is a parasite, though. He wouldn't say my name. That was fine. The logs were already spelling it out. Handshake required status waiting. By Tuesday at 10:20 a.m., the dashboards would fail in public client side, and compliance would open an incident that no one could spin. By Tuesday, the numbers would collapse in public view, and no amount of shouting would hide who they had really lost. Tuesday at 10:20 a.m., it stopped being hallway gossip and started living in a file. North Shore's team, Stephen Adler's people, ran a reconciliation report in their client portal and flagged 32 shipments marked delivered that were still sitting in Dallas. They didn't call Connor Price. They didn't call Marcus Trent. They opened a compliance ticket. That's the moment the wound starts bleeding into legal paper. By 11, 3 more clients had filed. A Nevada distributor, a trucking firm in Ohio that no one listens to until invoices start bouncing. All reporting the same thing, green dashboards, red reality. In Slack, Connor posted to the APS channel, Heads up North Shore filed INC 7841. Do not touch prod until compliance reviews. It read like a seatbelt after the crash. I wasn't there to hear it, but I can hear the compliance manager reading the clause anyway. Service credits apply for every 12-hour interval of unavailability or material inaccuracy. Downtime, you can debate. Material inaccuracy is ink. Numbers that say a box moved when the box did not. You don't argue with that. You account for it. Inside, HelioSync panics went performative. People typed louder. Meetings got longer. The same 4 words did lapse. We're looking into it. Connor tried to corral the flood with phrases that sound technical but don't help freight move. Cache alignment, temporary delay, planned remediation. Meanwhile, warehouse floors were still. Marcus did what doomed executives do. He yelled at the record. Someone told me he lit into a compliance manager for logging excessive detail. That's always the tell, blaming the documentation for being accurate. I sat on my porch with my badge still on the kitchen counter where I left it Friday and turned to a fresh page in my spiral notebook. I drew the heartbeat sketch again, the fail-safe loop tied to the handshake. Not because I needed the diagram, because I needed the reminder that I built this to protect the system from bad decisions. Years ago, in a client fire drill, I read that same SLA clause into a room where Marcus laughed and called it overkill. Nobody cares about invisible plumbing, Colin. Today the pipes were writing their own report. Have you ever watched someone try to fight paperwork that writes itself? Timestamps don't flinch. Incident queues don't take sides. Logs don't argue back. They just print. By mid-afternoon, compliance escalated the incident to the board. The folder name always sounds clinical board. Review potential breach. Inside it, everything has weight, client emails, ticket histories, screenshots of mismatched counts, a timeline that quietly cancels careers. I could almost hear Philip Crane's voice, flat surgical. We need a resolution path, not another excuse. At 3:42 p.m., my phone buzzed. Not Marcus, not Connor. A generic HR inbox, subject request for availability to discuss short-term consulting engagement. Polite, sterile, desperate. I let it sit. The system was already speaking for me in a language Marcus couldn't raise his voice over. That night I wrote one line across the top of a new notebook page in block caps. Handshake required status waiting. Same phrase glowing in their logs. Same request no one could answer. They thought they fired me. The system still knew my name. By 7:45 a.m., Wednesday, Crane's assistant would send the subject line I'd been expecting: closed session remediation options. And in that room, the questions would change. By Wednesday, the board would stop asking Marcus questions and start asking what it would take to bring me back. By Wednesday at 9, the subject line landed like a gavel: closed session remediation options. I didn't need the body. I could already hear Philip Crane's cadence measured surgical, the way attorneys talk when the facts are no longer up for debate. Inside, he offered 2 viable paths: keep bleeding service credits until stability returns, or engage the architect on a limited indemnified basis. He didn't type my name. He didn't have to. I set my badge back on the counter where it's lived since Friday and flipped my spiral notebook to a clean page. At the top, I wrote terms. Then I traced the blueprint I'd been carrying in my head for days. Triple rate, Wire up front net 0, not net 30. Remote only. No NDA beyond client and data privacy, nothing that muzzles the root cause. Full admin with rollback, not piecemeal. Connor Price is my sole point of contact. Marcus Trent barred from the channel, the calls and the approvals. Mutual indemnity, using my language, we don't sue each other for the fix you hired me to do. Privileged access management on a break glass account, time-boxed with a full audit trail. Change advisory board, waiver for emergency remediation. No committee meeting to discuss stopping the bleeding. Statement of work as Exhibit B, not a hallway promise. Boxes beside each line. I like boxes I can check. 10 minutes later, Crane called. No small talk. We're prepared to engage you, he said. Reasonable terms. Standard MSA. Philip, I said nothing about this is standard. Silence. Then, send your red lines. I had them ready, the template you keep and hope you never need. I forwarded the redlined Master Services Agreement, Exhibit B scope, Annex A, access list, a one-page indemnity rider, and my W-9. In the body, I wrote the only sentence that matters. Funds must clear before I touch prod. Procurement tried to run their play net 30, onboarding an expedited background check and DocuSign soup that would take a week even if everyone skipped lunch. I answered with one paragraph. You don't have a week. Wire the retainer today. Or keep paying North Shore to leave. I waited not anxiously, just long enough to remember the day I proposed break glass access and Marcus smirked. We're not NASA Colin. Sure. Right up until you're landing a broken capsule in the dark. At 10:46, Connor texted me from his personal phone, which told me the room temperature. We need you. Tell me what to do. I typed back, you'll be my point. Say it out loud in the room. No one else talks to me. He replied, done. Crane returned 15 minutes later, with the only sentence that matters, and a fire funds will clear by noon. He wanted timing. How long after that? It depends on how much you broke while denying it was broken, I said. Then I softened. He wasn't the problem. If your access list is correct, under an hour to restore integrity. The backlog will take longer to flush. Full authority, he asked. Or we don't do it. Another beat. Agreed. People think revenge is fire. Most of the time, it's paperwork. I watched the confirmation stack in a neat row. Amended agreement, countersigned, indemnity rider, accepted without edits, wiring instructions in a PDF with a file name that spelled panic. My bank pinged at 12:07, six figures, no fanfare. I didn't celebrate. I printed the SOUs, set my notebook beside it, and drew tiny boxes next to each line item. The petty joy of work that finally respects boundaries. Marcus tried an end run. A blocked number rang twice, then quit when I let it hit voicemail. Connor forwarded the war room transcript, Marcus arguing the engagement should run through him. Crane cutting him off with a flat, no. That's how you know the ground has already moved. The email thread titled, Access Break Glass, arrived. I scanned Annex A like a menu. Production clusters, yes. Message queue, yes. Labeling service, yes. Finance ingest, read only. That last one made me smile. Someone still had a survival instinct. I sent Connor one line. Create a private Slack channel with you and me. Add Crane as read only, no one else. He created it in under a minute. Wanju Remed colon. 2 voices, 1 pair of eyes. He posted the line I'd been waiting to see, per board directive. Marcus is not permitted to contact you. It landed like a door, locking quiet final. I paused. The porch door stood open. The house was still. The badge caught a sliver of sun on the counter. I thought about the years I argued for boring safety nets, the overkill Marcus mocked, the late-night diagrams in this same notebook that kept other people's names out of incident reports. I'm not proud of the part of me that enjoyed that sentence about him being barred. I won't lie about it either. Take a breath with me here. Have you ever been asked to fix the mess made by the person who fired you and had to decide how much of yourself you were willing to give back? Tell me how you handled it in the comments and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. This is the part no one teaches, how to come back on your terms without becoming the thing that broke you. I sent 3 instructions: provision a time-boxed break glass account tied to my hardware key, enable full audit on every action, start a clean incident timeline with my notes as the source of truth, no screenshots from marketing, no summaries from Marcus, facts, timestamps, results. Connor replied with the words, "I've been waiting for since Friday, access ready. Your call." I turned to a fresh page and wrote the 4-line sequence in block letters. I didn't need the reminder. Ritual matters. It slows your hands just enough to keep you from showing off. I opened my laptop and watched the terminal cursor blink like a held breath. Tomorrow at 11:02 a.m., I'd type the handshake and the dashboards would flip. Before that, one last box, I posted the first and last rule, in Remit: I run the play. No one speaks over me. Connor reacted with a single check mark. Crane didn't react at all. Better. By evening, the wire cleared, my terms were law, and the room that once ignored me now lived under my instructions. I closed the porch door, slid the badge deeper on the counter, and rested my palm on the warm page of my notebook. Tonight I'd sleep. In the morning, the system would remember me, and someone in that glass room would finally learn the difference between authority and access. At 10:59 a.m., I slid my hardware key into the laptop and opened the terminal. The porch was quiet enough to hear the refrigerator click off. My badge lay face down on the counter the way you lay a photo before you box it. I traced the 4-line sequence in my spiral notebook, touched the corner with the sky blue highlighter, and said it once under my breath. Break glass armed Pam logging on privilege access management cab waiver noted. No heroics. Procedure. At 11:02, I typed the handshake. The cursor blinked twice, listened, and answered like a dog that finally heard its name, said right session accepted. 2 lines I've only seen in a clean room appeared steady as a heartbeat. Integrity baseline restored. Orchestration rights, Colin Hale. I didn't smile. I went straight to the message queues, carved a bypass around Marcus's priority switch, and let the backlog bleed off the Safeway. West Coast nodes flipped from red to yellow to green. The SLA timer stopped hemorrhaging. Dallas quit printing duplicates. The chatbot dropped the unexpected awesomeness canned reply and apologized in plain English. In the war room, Connor Price posted in our private channel, "Green across the board," then pushed a screenshot to Philip Crane with the audit timestamps on the right and my session ID on the left. Proof matters more than applause, especially when someone will try to rewrite the order of events in a meeting. I paused not for the numbers for the record. Pam playback showed each elevation the exact moment the handshake took. People call that paranoia. It's memory. Then I opened Annex A and reclaimed the 2 levers Marcus had wedged open in exec bypass group and a hidden manual fast track. Fast track is executive for ignore the rules because I'm late. I didn't delete them. I disabled them and preserved diffs. In the right hands, a mistake is evidence. In the wrong hands, it's a scapegoat. Backlog at 43%, Connor wrote. North Shore is watching the live board. Tell them we normalize by top of the hour, I said. I added a line to the incident timeline in Confluence 11:12 a.m. Queue reroute active. Policy violations preserved read-only for postmortem per change management CM4. CM4 is the boring page that says if you break process, the log is the truth. Mine has a coffee ring. I keep it behind my notebook cover to remind myself policy is paper until it's enforced. By 11:17, return labels stopped lying. International manifests pulled the right customs codes. Phoenix reconciled without an error for the first time all week. I let myself take a normal breath, the adult kind you take when a problem finally behaves. Crane pinged me confirm client comms. Lawyer cadence even in Slack. Don't announce success, I typed. Announce status and accountability. I handed them the words, we restored continuity under emergency change. Full audit in progress. Interim controls implemented. Root cause review scheduled. Executives love a victory lap. The timeline is what protects the company. At 11:28, I gave Connor 3 moves. 1, disable Marcus's exec bypass everywhere except audit. 2, rotate every service account he touched and force MFA re-enrollment. 3, create a private S3 folder, legal-owned cloud storage, and drop the PAM playback, the routing diffs, and a 1-pager titled Continuity Findings Change 7421. No adjectives, timestamps, screenshots, and the single configuration line that turned a bad hunch into a 7-figure leak. Is he going to fight this? Connor asked, meaning Marcus Trent. Probably, I said, so give him nothing to fight but facts. The sky blue highlighter rolled toward the notebook's edge. I stopped it with a finger and checked boxes next to each SOW statement of work item. Same motion I used the day I drew the first failsafe, protect the system from malice and from pride. I told Marcus that once. He called it melodramatic. It sounds less dramatic when the lights come back on. At 12:02, the dashboard settled into that quiet hum you only notice when it's gone. Connor snapped a photo of the wall display and DM'd me. Share to the war room. Not yet, I said. Give metrics 15 minutes to prove it's not a sugar high. Then post 2 lines remediation stable. Audit packet prepared. Crane DM'd next board wants duration of backlogs and estimate on service credits. 2 hours to fully clear, I replied. Commercial can price the burn. My job is to stop it. The packet gives you the why. You'd expect some rush there, maybe swagger. What I felt was closer to grief, not for the title, for the years spent translating hygiene into politics, for the junior who mapped dependencies and had his work called theoretical, for the nights my name didn't make the notes because I wrote them and it felt improper to include myself. People call what I built a secret weapon. It was a seatbelt. They were offended I buckled it. At 12:31, Spokane cleared, and the queue settled into a healthy wobble. I exported the packet and dropped it in the legal folder with a signature hash. Then I opened a fresh page and wrote 3 names, Crane, Price, Trent. Beside the first 2, brief at 3 words. Beside the third, nothing. He wouldn't be in that room. His fingerprints would be. North Shore confirmed shipments back on schedule. Escalation closed, Connor posted at 12:44. Their room probably applauded. Out here, the screen door just breathed with the wind. I closed the terminal and pulled the hardware key. The cursor went back to its steady blink, board again, which is correct for software. On the counter, the badge looked smaller than it did on Friday. I turned it over and left it face down. Then I created a 15-minute invite, continuity findings change 7421. Attendees, Philip Crane, Connor Price. Location, a legal conference room Marcus can't badge into. Attachment, the packet. By mid-afternoon, HelioSync was steady. The money stopped pouring out the side. The board would get their play-by-play, and legal would have the record to separate a bad week from a bad leader. At 2:58, I put the sky blue highlighter across the top of the notebook like a latch slipped the hardware key into my pocket and stood. At 3:00 p.m., when we stepped into that room, I wasn't going to show them how I saved their system. I was going to show them who unbuckled the seatbelt and exactly what that silence cost. At HelioSync Logistics, the legal conference room door thudded shut like a vault. I set my spiral notebook down, laid the sky blue highlighter across the top like a latch, and slid the packet toward Philip Crane. Connor Price sat to my left. My hardware key stayed in my pocket. My badge was face down on my kitchen counter. I'm recording, Crane said. Good. Roll the playback. We ran 90 seconds of PAM privilege access management video. The cursor toggled an admin flag that should never exist in production exec OC bypass. A Slack bubble from Marcus Trent flashed. We don't have time for CAB. Flip fast track. CAB is the change advisory board, the don't crash the plane to beat traffic meeting. This wasn't a crash, I said when the clip froze. It was a silent wrong. Dashboards looked calm. Underneath routing ignored guardrails. Warehouses paid for the green. Crane's pen hovered, and the handshake. A seatbelt, I said. After our last near miss, I wrote it into policy CM4. If leadership circumvents approved change, the system shifts to continuity mode, up a def. It keeps lights on and blocks new bad orders until a verified pattern restores orchestration. I tapped Annex A. The clause circled under a faint coffee ring. Connor exhaled. North Shore Outdoor is back on schedule. They accepted your status note. Good. No victory laps. Document remediate learn. Crane studied me. The board will ask whether you engineered leverage. I engineered failsafes, I said. Logs prove it. I didn't erase the bypass. I preserved diffs, disabled the toggle, and recorded every elevation with PAM onto a legal-owned encrypted bucket. If I wanted leverage, there wouldn't be a record. He watched me. What do you want, Mr. Hale? Not my title back. Governance, I said, steadying the highlighter with a finger. Remove exec, Jew bypass from production audit only. Require dual control on high-risk toggles. 2 people, 2 keys. Make documentation and uptime KPI. Create an architect of record with veto authority on unsafe changes. Institutional, not personal. Crane wrote then, set the pen down, a small nod. And Marcus, he asked. I don't need him fired, I said. I need the seatbelt to stay buckled whether he's here or not. I'm not here to win a feud. I'm here to stop paying for pride. Crane flipped to the cost curve. The board meets at 8:00 a.m. They'll want a summary. 2 slides, I said. Page 1, the second exec bypass flipped. Page 2, cost during continuity versus projected cost if bad data flowed. I'll annotate and sign both. Interim retainer, principal systems. Architect outside vendor until governance is implemented. With terms, I said, my access stays under PAM. No one edits the incident timeline. I set the knowledge transfer cadence. This isn't a parade. It's a repair. He tapped Annex A. You included a handoff window. 14 days, I said. Not a threat, a control. If governance isn't live by then, the handshake privilege expires. Systems keep running, continuity mode remains, but orchestration returns to red only until the seatbelt is codified. It protects clients you and me from, we'll get to it later. Beyond the glass, a reflection moved broad shoulders, expensive suit posture like a dare. Marcus tried his badge on the legal door and got the red light. He didn't look in. He didn't have to. He knows this room. Root cause, Crane said. I turned to a screenshot I'd filed months ago in a folder named Seatbelt Marcus in Leadership Slack. Kill the alert noise for North Shore. We'll normalize after the quarter. I don't enjoy weaponizing messages, but prudence becomes evidence. Was this foreseeable, I asked. Yes, we forecasted it. We were told to be practical. Crane nodded. Connor looked at me instead of the packet. Colin? Why stay at all? Fair question. I pictured the badge face down on my counter. I could mail it and disappear, but I didn't spend a decade building something I believe in just to watch it become a cautionary slide in a recruiting deck. I want the next person in my chair to have authority proportionate to responsibility, I said. I want the work to stop being invisible until it fails. That's my price. Crane squared the packet. I'll brief the independents at 7. Closed session at 8. Mr. Price prep trend lines with Mr. Hale's notes. Mr. Hale, keep your session warm, but idle. No changes until after the vote. I pocketed the hardware key and the sky blue highlighter. The legal placard was rubbed smooth by decades of anxious hands. Smooth surfaces don't cut. They also don't hold. Marcus stood in the hallway, phone to his ear. My watch buzzed with a Slack I didn't answer. Call me, now. I pushed the exit bar. Cooler air met me. Crane's voice followed. If the board asks whether the system will hold without the new controls, what do I tell them? Tell them it'll hold, I said, but it won't learn. The door sealed. Tomorrow, Baz and 8:00 a.m. A room full of people who prefer smooth surfaces will meet a record they can't sand down. And if they try, I still have one file I never thought I'd use. By 7:58 a.m., I was outside the HelioSync boardroom, with my packet under one arm, the sky blue highlighter clipped to the cover, and the hardware key in my pocket like a coin you don't spend. My badge stayed face down behind the packet. Power isn't volume, it's documentation. Philip Crane, outside counsel, set the table the second we sat. No recording, exhibits numbered, counsel holds originals. He pushed a folder my way. Mr. Hale walked us through continuity controls and the sequence that led to Saturday's degradation. Connor Price slid into the chair behind me and went quiet. Marcus Trent came in late. Jaw tight didn't sit. I started with the replay. PAM privilege access management records, what elevated users actually do not, what they claim later. Exhibit C hit the screen, 191243. Marcus runs exec bypass to push a routing change straight to prod. Timestamp, command, return, no color, just the log. When I say continuity mode, I mean the system stays up but deaf until authority matches responsibility. I kept it in plain English. It's a pressure valve. It prevents visible failure while refusing to propagate bad inputs. It's compliant with our change control obligations and tied to access approvals. It lifts when 2 things happen. 1, the bypass is retired. 2, the right people approve through CAB. A director frowned. Define KB. The change advisory board, the don't crash the plane to beat traffic gate. A seatbelt, not a sword. Philip nodded. Chain of custody on this replay. Legal-owned export encrypted at rest hash in the footer. Verify whenever you want. The clerk scanned the footer and gave a quick thumbs up. Marcus leaned over the table. You're dressing up a lockout as safety. Safety is a lock that opens only for authorized keys, I said. We were safe. We were deaf because a bypass shouted over the controls. I flipped to the second slide. Here's what I'm asking you to adopt in order. First, retire exec bypass from production. Keep it in audit only. If we need an emergency change, we use the emergency cab template and record justification. Second, dual control for the exit. Ops and security both approve, not one or the other. Third, documentation becomes an uptime KPI. If it isn't documented, it isn't deployed. Fourth, create architect of record for core logistics. It's not a throne. It's a duty roster with rotation and accountability. Assign me for 90 days with a mandatory handoff. I let the highlighter rest so I wouldn't tap. I don't need control. I need controls. Marcus made a small, ugly laugh. So we give the keys to the guy who locked the door. A director finally looked up. Marcus, it locked because you ran the bypass. He shut his mouth. The board turned to me. If we approve this, how fast do we stop the bleeding? North Shore Outdoor will be back to full throughput by noon once the exit steps are adopted. Continuity will lift automatically when dual approvals land. I added one guardrail. I need a time-boxed forensic carve-out 36 hours counsel supervised. No write access except through the exit procedure. Legal holds originals I work off read-only matter copies. Approvals signed with the hardware key. Philip summarized for the record. Clean. Retire the bypass log. The approvals preserve evidence. He glanced at me. Anything else? Publish the governance memo internally. Not the exhibits, just the rules. Institutional, not personal. The votes came quickly. Retire exec. Bypass, yes. Add dual control, yes. Documentation as KPI, yes. Create architect of record, yes. Term limited. Philip capped it. Mr. Hale is appointed AOR for 90 days. Retainer approved controls adopted. During this term, Mr. Trent is removed from all change approvals in CAB leadership. He turned to Marcus. This is procedural, not punitive. The procedure protects the company. Marcus stared at the center of the table, as if it had betrayed him. I didn't gloat. I slid the hardware key deeper into my pocket and rotated the face-down badge a quarter turn. A seatbelt, not a sword. Next steps, Philip said. Mr. Hale will file the emergency CAB with explicit exit criteria. Ops plus security approve in tool. Counsel will receive the hash and capture the session on our machine. He pushed a blank pad toward me. Dictate the exit note. No adjectives. Authority matched to responsibility. Bypass retired. Dual approval complete, I said. Continuity disengaged at 10:41 a.m. Central. Throughput normalizing. No new code deployed during exit. Add that last line exactly, Philip told the clerk. We adjourned. In the hallway, Connor showed me a live dashboard greens where there had been yellow, a few amber blocks waiting for caches. North Shore's at 92%. They just canceled the penalty email, he said. Quiet relief, not celebration. Marcus stepped like he might intercept me, then pivoted toward the elevators. Alone. I didn't watch the doors. My job wasn't to witness his consequence. It was to prevent the next one. Back at a borrowed desk, I opened the emergency KAB template and typed without flair, retire exec year bypass. Assign dual approvers, enforce doc as KPI. Assign AOR 90 days. Require hardware key signatures. I uploaded the hash receipt to Legal's Matter drive and waited for ops and security to approve. 2 pings. Done. Continuity stood down like a well-trained guard dog hearing a familiar whistle. Finance posted the first clean hour. Support queues thinned. The vendor hotline stopped saying, "We're experiencing unexpected awesomeness." I'd written that joke line years ago for a drill. Hearing it all week felt like a stranger wearing my jacket. I packed the packet. The highlighter clipped back on. The badge stayed face down. Connor paused at my door. "You okay?" "Better with rules than apologies," I said. We trusted a promise over a policy once already. An engineer paid for it with their health. We're not repeating that lesson. He nodded. "I'll keep the KAB tight." "Do that," I said. Power isn't volume, it's documentation. At 2:10 p.m., an invite from HR landed on my calendar. Informal check-in today. No agenda, just a room number and a smiley. I stared at it then, at the hardware key in my palm. The next move wasn't in a room. It lived in a clause I wrote years ago, the one nobody noticed until they needed me again. I kept my badge face down on the desk, like a closed eye, while the war room spun up on my laptop. Connor Price had pulled me into the ops bridge. Philip Crane joined from the board line, voice even legal. Karen Holt sat off camera with her HR binder open to a page I'd once marked with a sky blue highlighter. Marcus Trent paced at the glass, all motion, no direction. "Let's anchor terms," Philip said. "We are reviewing HSIR 4829, the Heliosync incident docket, for data integrity and continuity." Hearing the number out loud clicked a seatbelt. I'd built that template 2 years ago, for the day we'd need to prove we were adults. Today was that day. I shared my screen. Left panel the audit trail, right panel, change advisory board, calendar. Mysteriously empty the night, everything slipped. Third window, 2 letters from Stephen Adler's team, measured expensive, very patient. I kept my tone calm. This wasn't a system crash. It was a governance bypass. Cab skipped, separation of duties broken, and a verbal override issued by the COO without record. Marcus leaned toward the mic. "You're editorializing, Colin." "No," I said. "I'm reading." I highlighted the line the metadata had signed for him. Override priority sync. Approver M. Trent. Evidence none. Connor's pencil tapped 3 beats and stopped the sound he makes when logic is about to win. Karen cleared her throat. "From HR's view, we violated policy 4.7 on expert retention." She didn't look at Marcus when she said it. She didn't have to. Terminating the architect of record mid-migration created foreseeable harm. Cut-through line I'd been saving. "We didn't hit an iceberg," I said. "We fired the navigator and then yelled at the compass." I dropped the Slack receipts, +E ops bridge M. Trent. "Push it now. No time for KIB theater. J. Ramos, outside the window. Need sign-off. M. Trent, I am sign-off." Julia had DM'd me that night, document everything. She understands mazes. Philip moved us to consequence. Connor, since Colin restored the handshake, Connor said we've preserved roughly $11 to $12 million in churn risk. But reputational drag continues unless we publish the docket and settle with Adler. I plugged in the small matte hardware key and rotated it like a coin I didn't want to spend. "Final step," I said. "We return stewardship of the routing brain to Ops under multi-sig. My ghost retires, the locks stay." Marcus tried the personal angle. "We can't run a company by Colin-only ritual." "That's what I'm ending," I said. "This protects you from me and from you." The board line muted. Counsel whispered in someone's ear. I let a clean, quick anger pass through me. 14 years of midnight saves, and blame always moved faster than code. Then I let it go. Cool again. "Unmute. Proceed, Mr. Hale," Philip said. "Governance restart 3 pieces." I kept it plain English. 1, reactivate KAB with a 5-person quorum, ops, security, vendor relations, finance, architect of record. 2, executive overrides must be written and auto-archived with signatures. 3, publish a client note that references HSIR 4829 without drama, just proof. Stephen Adler joined with a pop of audio. "Share the docket," he said, "and show the new controls. If Colin owns cutover, we'll lift our hold by day's end." His tone carried practical mercy. We didn't deserve it. We'd use it. Karen added HR's fix. "We're drafting a retention framework for critical roles, title protection knowledge transfer stipends, and a no-fault pause if leadership changes mid-quarter." She finally turned toward Marcus. "And we'll train managers on what non-negotiable means." I ran the script. The console asked for a second factor, then a third. Multi-sig invites hit Connor and Julia. Green. Green. Dashboard settled into the shape I know by heart, the tide returning to its shoreline. There was the quiet motive I hadn't said out loud. The money was nice, dignity better, but neither was the point. I looked at my face-down badge thumbprint, smudged from the day they walked me out. "This works only if we tell the story straight," I said. "You don't have to apologize to me. You do have to tell the truth to the people who kept this place running." Marcus snorted. "You want a parade?" "I want an audit log with a conscience," I said. Then I softened it for the 2 a.m. readers. Name who did the work. Connor stabilized distribution. Julia flagged the unsafe window. Karen reopened the right policy. I wrote the keys. That's the point. Philip nodded, agreed. He widened the board camera. Papers shuffled. A vote sheet slid on screen. I didn't speak. Systems either tell on you or save you. They had already told on Marcus. Mr. Trent Phillips said evenly, "Effective immediately, you are placed on administrative leave pending final determination." The sentence landed like a quiet door that would not reopen. For a breath, I was 27 again. tracing fiber with a flashlight in a humming room, promising myself that if I ever had power, I'd use it so people didn't have to be brave in the dark. I rotated the hardware key back out. Escrowed with ops, my elevated access downgrades at midnight. Julia sent a in-ops bridge, then a private line. We kept the receipts. We'll keep the culture too. I flipped the badge face up. The photo showed a younger me who believed excellence could outrun politics. Maybe it can't. But controls can box politics in until it stops breaking things. Philip rapped. Client note goes out in 1 hour with HSIR 4829 attached. Mr. Hale, thank you for your discipline. I closed the terminal. The sky blue highlighter lay next to the printed docket cap, cracked from years of pockets. I drew a small line under the clause that mattered. No single person may materially alter logistic state without recorded consent from the KAB quorum. Simple, heavy, human. My phone buzzed unknown number. I didn't need caller ID to know it was Marcus looking for a private fix the record wouldn't see. I let it ring. Then I pressed accept, set the phone on speaker, and said nothing. The next move wouldn't be technical. It would be the story we put in writing at 8 a.m., tomorrow, board vote client note, or both. And I already knew which one I'd sign. By 8 the next morning, at HelioSync Solutions, HSIR 4829, our incident record was ready to close, and my badge sat face up on my desk like a quiet witness. I walked the change advisory board through the last items without drama, dual key restore, verified logging, stitched end to end, and the rollback I'd refused to do yesterday, now permanently blocked by policy 4.7R. I signed the RCA in the margin with my sky blue highlighter, same one I've used for years, and slid my hardware key into a plain brown envelope. It didn't feel like surrender. It felt like a procedure finally finished the right way. The fallout was clean, not loud. By lunch, Marcus Trent accepted a transition to strategic partnerships, which everyone in corporate knows means escorted exit and a box with a stapler you didn't like anyway. Karen Holt at HR pushed a company-wide memo at 1:04 p.m. Effective immediately, all production changes require CAB review and dual key authorization per policy 4.7R. I drafted 4.7R weeks ago, privilege separation, and change control, because pride breaks systems faster than bugs. Seeing it codified was like locking a door I'd been holding shut with my shoulder. Connor Price, our CFO, kept the call with Stephen Adler at Vector Lane Logistics. We didn't spin it. We accounted for it. I sent Connor one graph. Stephen could show his board orders. Corrected SLA back inside tolerance and a 3-line summary written in normal English root cause unauthorized bypass of CAB. Mitigation policy 4.7R enforced. Verification independent controls passed. Connor read it verbatim. Stephen exhaled. We agreed to a service credit and, more importantly, a joint audit on their schedule. Trust isn't a speech, it's a ledger. At 2:11 p.m., Felicia Knox pinged me on Slack. Your documentation is unfairly good. I typed back, I wasn't writing for applause, I was writing for audit. Dry, sure. But the record is the story when memories start to lawyer up. I've learned the person holding the checklist wins once the room cools down. There were human pieces too. Julia Ramos tucked a sticky note under my monitor, coffee's on me when this is over. It shouldn't have hit as hard as it did. I slid it under my keyboard like a receipt from a decent day. Marcus never messaged and I didn't expect him to. Pride is a closed loop, no inputs, no outputs, just heat. I've stopped trying to cool other people's reactors. Philip Crane, the audit chair on our board, stopped by with a yellow legal pad. We're closing the special session at 3, he said quietly. Anything you want? In the minutes I tapped the envelope with my hardware key. Yes, the system was never broken. Governance was. He wrote it down verbatim. I underlined governance with that same sky blue line I used the night he voted to greenlight 4.7R. Call it pettiness if you want. I call it continuity. We finalized my separation agreement as the last cab item before the gavel, clean paper. No gag clause, no poison pill, no heroic return narrative. I negotiated one thing that mattered. 4.7R now sits under board oversight. If anyone wants to bypass it, they'll sign where the auditors can see. That's not revenge. That's a guardrail you can see from the driver's seat. Karen met me at my cube with my final check of file box and a practiced smile that for once wasn't condescending. No exit interview, I asked. Not today, she said. HR choosing silence over spin felt like progress. In the elevator, I weighed the envelope with the hardware key one last time. I could have kept it as leverage as insurance as the old habit of being needed, but leverage is just deferred anxiety. In the lobby, I handed the envelope to Connor. 2 key protocol stays, I said. If someone tries to roll it back, CAB gets paged first. He met my eyes. It stays. I believed him. Not because he promised, but because it's in writing and he's the one holding the ledger. Outside, I sat on the low concrete wall by the smoker's sign and let the afternoon traffic do its soft, indifferent thing. The cost hit me slow. Not money Heliosync paid what they owed, plus hazard pay for living inside someone else's ego. The cost was the habit I'd built of always being the fireman instead of the firewall. You give years to a system, and it quietly takes your weekends, your patience, your sense that you're only what you protect. Leaving means admitting you're more. I don't hate Marcus. I don't admire him either. I wanted accountability, not a head. The difference matters to me. Revenge is temporary. Controls persist. When people ask what I got, I'll say a policy that outlives me, a record that can't be spun, and a quiet I didn't expect to feel. Philip emailed the minutes at 4:12 p.m. One line made me smile in a way that didn't show. Incident closed without data loss. Culture adjusted with visible cost. That's the sentence I wanted on the wall, even if it lives in a PDF instead. Felicia followed with her independent attestation. No sabotage identified. Protective controls functioned as designed, once governance realigned. It's a clinical way of saying what I never said aloud. I built it to survive sabotage, but not stupidity. I packed light, the sky blue highlighter, a dog-eared notebook with sketches of the routing graph, a laminated copy of 4.7R I'd printed the day the board first balked. My badge stayed behind, face down, now logged and disabled. If you've lived the fired, then called back, then set the rules loop, or had to make the record tell the truth, because the room wouldn't tell me how you did it. Share it so someone else knows they're not the only one, with a folder of receipts and a tired smile. And if you want more of these quiet, unglamorous wins, the kind that change how a place works, subscribe. I'll keep telling the parts HR memos can't teach. On the way home, I stopped for office supplies. Out of muscle memory, bought a fresh sky blue highlighter and tossed the old one in the trash by the door. 2 small objects, 2 decisions. The envelope with the key is gone, the policy remains. At the red light by the river, a thought passed through me like static. What if I hadn't documented every step I let it drift out the open window? I did document it. That's why it ended here on paper, in policy with the system humming and me finally off call.